Sex is like biological, and gender is more self-determined.
Sex is kind of more like a biological thing. I guess more physical, where like gender is kind of just more about like the way you act or like the way you behave, like characteristics, that kind of thing.
People conflate the terms sex and gender. People use them interchangeably. I'm in a biology class right now where they consistently talk about gender being the result of certain chromosomes, but that's not true at all. It's only your sex.
You now have, I guess, more so three options, like male, female, and your transgender in between. But I think they're both like extremely fluid scales. I think they're interrelated to a point where we shouldn't be as separative with the categories.
I think it's more important for people to know the difference between sexual orientation and gender expression, because then you're labeling people like transvestites as gay when that's not the case. Like you take something like the way people dress and make that equivalent to their sexual orientation, which it's not. So you have like feminine lesbians being identified as straight girls and being hit on by guys when actually they're like not about that.
Gender expression and sexual orientation are terms that sort of you hear a lot next to one another, but there is a distinction, definitely. Sexual orientation is who you're attracted to. Gender expression is much more personal. It has very little to do with anybody else, if at all.
It's this issue of you want to be one with your identity, and you want people to know that. You don't want to have to come out over and over again. You don't want people to be surprised that you're this or that, because those are just reactions that, I mean, you do have to deal with anyway, but it's just easier when it's kind of unspoken.
I think it's important for people to differentiate between sexual orientation and gender expression, because it keeps people from like prejudging or like, stereotyping.
Of course it's important. I mean, why would you, for the same reason it's important to be knowledgeable about different cultures, it's important to be knowledgeable about subcultures, especially subcultures that historically and currently have disadvantages.
No one is wearing their sexual orientation on their sleeve. You can't, although people do, you can't look at someone and say, I know you're attracted to this person, this gender, this or that.
In my opinion, I don't think labels are really important at all, because you like who you like, you don't like who you don't like, and that's all that matters.
It's an inherently personal thing, and you have to engage with it at a personal level. So if you meet somebody asking them how they identify, if they say they don't identify as anything, trying to put them into a box can be frustrating for that person. However, if somebody says, I am this thing, I identify with this, and you try to, sort of erase that by saying, maybe you're just, maybe it'll change or maybe this will happen, that can also be kind of patronizing.
Another reason labels are important is because they change all the time. So yeah, labels are just pointless because they really have no relevance.
However, for certain people, when they find a word that describes something they've been struggling with, and they find a community of people with that same experience, it can be the most comforting thing in the world.
It's important to understand these gender and sexuality issues so you can move past those stereotypes and look at people as human beings instead of just their gender or their sexual orientation.
I think a lot of people in the queer and LGBT community are frustrated that we have to be educators constantly to people who don't necessarily even want to learn, which is very frustrating.
In my experience as like a straight female, it wasn't until I was older that I really got exposed to the LGBT community, and especially because growing up I was always in a Christian home, going to church every Sunday, and I don't know, it just wasn't something that really occurred to me or that I hadn't really thought about until I was older.
Yeah, people can be very ignorant about just the seriousness of it, I guess. I had someone, I don't even know who it was. Someone left a note on my car after I was at my girlfriend's house. It was Macklemore song lyrics. It was does she keep you warm from same love? And it was anonymous. It was really creepy.
In an ideal world, gender and sexuality would be a non-issue. It wouldn't be this census box that you have to check.
I used to think for a long time that gender would eventually become obsolete, because the way we see it right now is very much boys versus girls, men versus women, and there's there's little to no room for people who aren't male or female, or men or women. I mean, something has to change with regards to how we perceive gender because people are getting hurt.